Have you ever felt like you've maybe lost a little bit of your passion for your podcast? I think nearly every podcaster who's been at this for a while has found themselves in that situation where their passion kind of ebbs and flows. Thing is, when that happens, you're in danger of hanging up the whole thing. What does that have to do with an airplane ride? Well, keep listening and I'm going to tell you. What's happening, podcasters? This is 1000 Podcasters. I'm Brian Ensminger, and I want to see you be incredibly successful with your podcast. Back in 2017, I was really struggling with my show. I'd been podcasting for a few years, and it's not that it was hard to produce. I had a small team helping me, but I was tired, and I was overwhelmed, and I just wasn't feeling it. I'd lost a little bit of the passion for my show, and if I'd been paying attention, I might have taken the advice that I'm going to give you today. But I was reminded about this in a recent airplane ride. I'm going to share that experience with you, and then one key takeaway that I rediscovered in that flight. So here's the deal. My family right now, as I'm recording this, is on a vacation. We've been working toward this for a while. And as part of that vacation, we had a couple of airplane rides. My wife and my daughter, who's 8, and my son, who are 6, we got to the airport incredibly early. It was an early flight, like a 6:30 a.m. flight. And we had a couple of legs. We had to fly from Nashville to Denver, then from Denver to our final destination to see my parents and to spend some time with them. But as part of that flight, we were in a relatively small plane. My wife and my daughter were in the same row as us, but on the other side of the aisle. And then my son and I were there. My son was next to the window, and I was sitting next to him. And he had been on a plane before, but it's been a while. And being 6, he didn't remember it all that well. So it's almost like it was his first flight ever. We were going through how to put the seatbelt on and going through the information, the placard for how to be safe on the plane, all kinds of stuff like that. First time for him for most of that. And we were playing little games like as we started to back up, we would play which direction is the plane going to turn next as we were taxiing. Sometimes I was right, sometimes he was right, but it was exciting. But he had never really remembered having the experience of the power of the engines. So as we got to the runway and started getting ready to take off, they put the brakes on and they just fire up those engines, and he starts to feel the power of the plane, and he just starts to freak out. Not scared, just like super excited about all of this. And then we start going, and he's watching out the window as the plane is going faster and faster and faster. And having flown a few times, not a whole lot, but I've flown enough. I could kind of feel when the plane was starting to get lighter, so to speak. And so I started doing a countdown, and I don't know how I timed it right, but just at the right time when I got from that 3, 2, 1, I counted backwards from 3 to 2 to 1. We took off at just the right time so that it's like I almost kind of knew what was going on. And so he sees the plane taking off right at the exact time, and his eyes get huge, and he raises his hands in the air, and he starts kind of cheering. And there's some people sitting around us who are all kind of watching and giggling, like enjoying it, not like laughing at him, laughing with him as he watches as we start coming away from the earth. And then in a little while, we kind of looked out the window and, okay, now we're starting to fly through some clouds. And it was like the first time for him, even though it wasn't really his first, it was like the first time. And there was just such incredible joy there and such incredible exuberance over that whole thing. And it wasn't quite the same the second time we took off. We flew from Nashville to Denver. Then from Denver, we took off again. And when we took off that time, it was still exciting, but it wasn't the same as that. Why am I telling you this? Because I've flown before. It wasn't all that exciting to me. In fact, in some ways, flying is kind of boring. You've got mediocre food. You've got a drink that's a little bit too small. We were in the back of the plane, so we watched the food cart go up, and then we're the last ones to get served. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that. But being able to sit next to him and watch him enjoy this for the very first time, that gave me something that was brand new, or it reminded me of my enjoyment. And I think that can be the same for us as podcasters, especially if we've been serving a group of people around a topic or a particular audience for a while. Sometimes it's easy for us to forget what it's like for somebody when it's new. Maybe they've discovered your podcast for the first time. Maybe they've discovered the topic for the first time. Maybe they've discovered you for the first time. It's easy for us, because we've been through this before, to become disconnected from what that first time experience is and the incredible joy that happens when you find out that there are people out there that are like you, or when you find out that there's somebody who's addressing this topic that you're struggling with. Maybe you have a show where you cover a topic for education, where people that are struggling with that topic can get information. Maybe you have a comedy show. Maybe you're providing support for a large group of people. When we become disconnected from those first time people, when we forget what that's like, it's really easy to forget and to lose that passion. But when we're able to connect with people with whom, for whom this is something new, we can sometimes then not only draw from that experience. I'm not talking like vampire drawing from it, but we can kind of draw from that experience, but it can also then remind us of what it was like when we were new, and we can kind of marry those two things together. And in that way, I really think that sometimes we can find or re-find that passion that we had. You might just find that the passion that you had that was waning, and maybe you'll be able to rekindle that, and you'll find that reason to continue. Maybe you'll find that drive again that was once there, and then add that to the passion that you're seeing in people that it's new, and you'll find the reason to continue, and not just to continue slogging through it, but to find incredible joy in it. And that's what I want. I don't want you just to keep slogging through something and producing content because it helps people. I want you to also enjoy it. And there is incredible joy in realizing not only that you're serving people, but that they're finding joy in what you're doing, and that you can kind of then put that together. If you've ever struggled with your passion, what I'd like to ask you to do is a couple of things. One, I'd like to ask you to share in the comments what that experience was like for you. Why were you struggling? What was it that helped you get through that? Are you on the other side? Or are you still going through that? I'd love you to share your story in the comments, partly because I'd like to hear from you. I really would like to hear from you, but also partly because there are other podcasters out there that probably need to hear your story and might benefit from it. And then I'd also like you to just take a minute and share this with some other podcaster that you think might benefit from you. I'd love to hear your story. I think other podcasters would too, but I think they could also benefit from hearing this kind of thing. If you're interested in connecting with me, toptieraudio.com is the place to do that. That's where you're going to find the show notes. You can very likely tap through in your favorite podcast app, but if you can't, Top Tier Audio is where you're going to find that. That's where you can leave the comment, toptieraudio.com. If you'd like to set up a consultation to talk about your show, I'd be glad to talk to you. Or if you'd just like to connect with me, toptieraudio.com is a place to do all of that. Thanks again for being with me. I really, really do appreciate that, and I hope that this benefits you. Now go out there and make a great podcast.